Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Don't Bug Me series. I'm Ellen Huckabee with the Alabama Cooperative Extension System, and I'll be hosting today's webinar. If you have a question during the presentation, please type it in the chat box to the left, and Dr. Kathy Flanders and others will be monitoring the box and answering questions during Dr. Suter's presentation. At the end of the presentation, we're going to put up 4 short poll questions for you to answer, followed by a link to an online survey. We would greatly appreciate it if you would take the time to answer these questions and evaluate our program today. Today's Don't Bug Me topic is Fall Home Invaders, presented by Dr. Dan Suter from the University of Georgia. Dr. Suter is a professor of entomology specializing in urban entomology. He has conducted research and extension work on urban pests since 1987, and he currently works closely with the pest control industry as an extension educator and researcher. He received his Bachelor's of Science, Master's of Science, and PhD from the University of Florida, and spent 5 years working at Purdue University before coming to the University of Georgia in 2000. He loves his work, and I believe that we're going to see proof of that today in his presentation. So, Dr. Suter, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, I appreciate it, Ellen, and I want to welcome everybody from wherever you might be viewing today's webinar. We're enjoying beautiful weather here in south of Atlanta. Hopefully, you're going to get some rain. It seemed like we couldn't turn the spigot off this past spring, and now we can't get any rain. But I think we're going to get a little bit later. This weekend is starting to feel like fall, and you know what happens when fall rolls around, and that's really the topic of what I want to talk about today. We're going to spend a pretty good amount of time on kudzu bugs, and then if we have a little bit of time left over, we'll go through some of the other fall invaders. But there's been a lot of movement over the past couple of years about the kudzu bug, and boy, it's spread like wildfire. We first found this thing in 2009 up around northeast Atlanta, and it has just taken off. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that, and then some other fall invaders and critters, and some of the things that can be done from a homeowner's perspective to keep these critters out of your house. But before we get going on that, there's a slide I wanted to show everybody that we generated earlier this year. This doesn't have a lot to do with our fall invaders like kudzu bugs and the box elder bugs and the ladybugs and that kind of thing, but I had to show you this because it was so impressive. So as part of my program, we conduct research on ants and their control. So a couple weeks ago, we were down in a little bit south of here. I'm in Griffin, Georgia, which is south of Atlanta. I was even a little bit further south than here. And it was in July, and we're walking around these buildings, kind of getting assessments of the ant populations around here, and I saw some wriggling little mosquito larvae in this frying pan. It's a standard size frying pan. So I had this, like entomologists have these weird ideas sometimes. I said, I wonder how many mosquitoes are in that pan. So I brought this frying pan back with me with all the mosquito larvae in it. These are ramen noodles, I think, in here. So you can see them right in here. Somebody was cooking some ramen noodles, I think, burn them and put the frying pan outside. Well, it rained, so I brought the frying pan back and had my technician count the number of mosquitoes in this pan. So get ready for this. There were almost 6,350 mosquito larvae in this pan. So, we kind of get complacent. We hear all the time, eliminate the standing water, and we hear it so much we get complacent about that kind of thing. And I wanted to show some factual numbers here as to why it really is important to eliminate standing water. So, I digressed a little bit. This really doesn't have anything to do with fall invaders, but it really brings home the point of mosquitoes and standing water. So in terms of control of some of the fall pests that we're going to talk about, by far probably the best thing that you can do is what these critters are doing. When we talk about fall invaders, what's going on in the fall is that, let me turn this arrow off. What's going on in the fall is these critters are, the things that invade our homes, are reacting to external conditions. So the temperature's changing. It's a time of year when we're getting cold snaps. The average nighttime temperature is going down. Day length is changing dramatically. This triggers these insects to go find a place to spend the winter. And so if they don't go find a place to spend the winter, they're going to die. So a number of the critters that we have problems with, all the critters that we have problems with in the fall are just reacting to external conditions, and they're looking for a place to overwinter. So really the best thing to do, it happens every year. We know it happens every year. So the best thing to really do, I think, is probably avoid this condition. We know it's coming. We avoid this condition through exclusion. So typically in urban pest management, it's a complaint-driven business, right? So we get bugs and then we call somebody. But when we know something's coming, and it happens every single year, it's probably quite prudent to do something prior to that event. And with fall invaders, we know it's going to happen. So one of probably the most important thing that you can do is seal up your house. Whether that's caulking, or some pest control companies will use, there's a product, I can't remember what it's called, but it's essentially steel wool. And you go around the outside of structures and you, like fascia board or anything that might be close to your brick, if there are areas where bugs can get in, you want to put some type of steel wool or something that would exclude those insects. And make sure you go around the structure with kind of a fine-tooth comb and do some exclusions. It's not a bad idea as well to maybe do some spot applications of some insecticides around those areas. Not widespread applications around the entire structure. And I'm going to get to that in just a second with some of the problems that poses in the slide that you're showing here. But some spot applications of pesticides that are fresh deposits, so when the insects do encounter those deposits in the next month, it's a very critical time right now, when they start looking for ways to get in, perhaps they will be exposed to those deposits of insecticides and be killed at that point. So I wanted to talk a little bit about widespread application of pesticides, especially on the homeowner side, some of the over-the-counter pesticides that homeowners have access to, and the professional side as well. So earlier this year, there was an EPA mandate that is going to impact both homeowner and professional use of insecticides that are called pyrethroids. If you go over to Home Depot, a homeowner goes over to Home Depot or Lowe's or any of the big box stores like that, all the products that replace the Dursbans and diazonons and those products are pyrethroid insecticides. They're mostly generic. And so things like bifenthrin, I'll show a slide here in just a second that gives you an idea what the name of those pesticides are. But most of the pesticides that are available over the counter at Home Depot are also available to the professional. And so because most of those things are generic. Some data that came out of California for the past multiple years has shown that insecticides that are applied in a home environment like this, so a pesticide might be applied over here in the home environment. When it rains, that pesticide winds up in this water. This drain right here drains to a creek, and eventually it's going to wind up in this stream over here. And they had really good data to show that bifenthrin and some other pesticides were showing up in quantities that were coming off of property. So that led to some recent restrictions on the use of pyrethroid insecticides in both over-the-counter and home in professional use. Many of these pyrethroids, by the way, are very, very toxic to fish and other aquatic life. So therein came the restriction. So they're really restricting the use of these things. These are the active ingredients that you see here. So things like anything that ends in a THRIN. If you go over to Home Depot, bifenthrin, cypermethrin, deltamethrin, lambda-cyhalothrin, cyflothrin, beta-cyflothrin. All these things are pyrethroid insecticides, and their fish and other aquatics are very susceptible to these insecticides. So if they get in water, they can have some serious detrimental impacts on aquatic environments. So the EPA is really making, you can see label changes in the over-the-counter and professional side already, where they're really restricting the use of these things to spot and crack and crevice treatments. And that kind of is perfect for fall invaders. You want to go up and and do spot treatments. You don't want to do widespread application, banned applications of these things around your structure because this stuff might end up in water. One other thing I wanted to throw in here, don't ever fall for any of these ultrasonic pest management devices either. They don't work. They've been tried. They've been researched by multiple major research universities all over the U.S. and they're just not effective. And you still see them. I still go into the Home Depots and Lowe's, and these things are still for sale, and they don't work. So let's just leave it at that. There's lots of data out there that demonstrates these things really don't work. Okay, on to the kudzu bug stuff. So back in 2009, so I work very closely with the pest control industry. My wife works very closely with the county agents here in Georgia as an insect diagnostician, so she gets insects sent to her for identification. In the same week, almost the same day, 1 month, 2 weeks before Halloween in 2009, we started getting samples of kudzu bugs sent to us. And I got several local pest control companies in the Atlanta area. She got a bunch from county agents of these stinking little things that looked like something that we thought we knew what it was. Turned out we didn't know what it was. Turned out to be a kudzu bug. A guy that I work with on a termite project actually knew what it was. And it's from Asia. The critter's from Asia. We have a geneticist that thinks it's probably from Japan, that the original population probably came from Japan. We probably will never know how it got into the U.S., but, you know, the 800-pound gorilla, I think, is the world's busiest airport right up the way, so surrounded by kudzu, by the way. So it does eat kudzu. Its preferred food is kudzu and soybean, and that has, so there's two components to the kudzu bug. So it really hammers the kudzu and is reducing kudzu growth by about, 30-35%, but it's also impacting yield. If you're listening in the Midwest right now, it's also impacting yield on soybeans by about 25% here in the Southeast. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, and I say that because it's a major ag pest, but it's also is really beating down the kudzu. And kudzu is a federally noxious weed that was imported over 100 years ago into the U.S. as, you know, take your pick, as either an ornamental or a forage, or it's used currently in the Southeast on stream beds or stream banks to keep erosion down. So when we first found this thing, it was in northeast Atlanta. We went up to the lady's house. This was a kudzu patch. Get this arrow here. There was a kudzu patch right back here. This lady had bugs all over the side of her house. So you can see the numbers here. This was the first year that we found them. This was the fall of 2009. And the numbers don't seem to be quite the way they used to be. And I'll speculate on some of that here in just a few minutes. But in general, the bug is self-regulating. It's beating down its primary food source. And we have a new parasitoid that is being found, an egg parasitoid that's probably have some impact on the bug as well. But this was the numbers that we'd had initially found. You can see they're attracted to the white surface up here and up high on the fascia boards of this house. So this lady, the bug is attracted to white, and this lady, she worked 2 counties away and drove a white car, and so every day she got in her car, she was spreading kudzu bugs all over northeast Georgia as she was going from point A to point B. So we like to say that she did her part to help spread the kudzu bug throughout the northeast part of the state. But you know, I've gone down the road with these things attached to my window, and you got to go 70 miles an hour before they actually dislodge. So they'll grab onto the windshield and they don't dislodge until about 70 miles an hour. It's quite amazing. So they are attracted to white. There's some really good data that comes out of the U.S. Forest Service in Athens, Georgia, that they have a very strong attraction to white, and that's because white reflects light. And it's the reflection of the light. So you go into an area like this where you might have, a brick home, And you have very few bugs on the brick, but they have this major strong attraction to the white. And so you can see I didn't take a picture here, but behind this gutter, there's just thousands and thousands of bugs packed in there. And this picture was taken last November here in the Atlanta area. By the way, they're starting to fly right now. I was out doing some field work yesterday, and they started flying and landing on my shirt. And so they're starting to do their thing. They'll probably ramp up here in the next 3 weeks. And then the first cold snap that we get in November here in Georgia, the numbers will go down. So here's the distribution. So this map, thanks to Wayne Gardner, who's an entomologist in our group here. Wayne has been compiling this map since the discovery of this critter. So you can see here, you can put the map, the first 9 counties we found it in October 2009 were up here in northeast Atlanta. And then you can see how quickly it spread. So in 2010, the green counties, 2011, the blue counties, and you look now, it's all the way down to Tampa, all the way over to Louisiana, all the way up here to Delaware, I guess, all the way up. So in just 4 years, it has spread. It's just spread like wildfire, and it's attracted to white, and it flies really well when it's on a wall. It doesn't walk real well, but when it flies, it kind of flies like a house fly. So we think it's probably been moving by decades, even more than that per flight. I didn't say this, but it has essentially there's 2 test peaks of this thing. We talk about nuisance, the nuisance aspect of kudzu bugs. So here's the life cycle of it. So right now, the bugs that are going to be causing a nuisance here in the next couple weeks are bugs that are the second generation that are coming off of both kudzu and soybean right now. Okay, so the physiology of the soybean and the kudzu is changing right now and will be dying in the next 6 weeks. Kudzu bugs are sensing that, and they're reacting to changes in temperature. They're reacting to changes in day length. So there's a bunch going on in the kudzu bug right now that's saying, we better start moving to a place that we can overwinter. So that's what they will be doing in the next 6 weeks. They will be flying and aggregating on structures and getting behind things and down a leaf litter to overwinter. As we go into the winter months, they're quiet. If we have a warm day next February or March, they'll warm up. They'll become a nuisance again. When that happens into March, the bugs are a nuisance in that early springtime. But the kudzu hasn't started to grow yet, so they don't have anything to eat. Here in Georgia, we don't actually start seeing significant kudzu growth until April. So the bugs are flying around literally just being a nuisance. These are the bugs that were born right now, are the ones you're going to see next March. When the kudzu grows, the nuisance factor kind of dies off because now they got something to eat. They move over onto the kudzu, and from April on into the summertime, that pest status as a nuisance really kind of dies off. But now they get in kudzu. They go through one complete life cycle on kudzu. About the time that they're coming off of that life cycle, soybeans are being planted. And so they infest soybeans for the first time, and they reinfest kudzu, go through a second life cycle, and those adults are the ones that are coming off right now. So kudzu patches have been kind of full of kudzu bugs now in a huge adult population for the past month or so. And so as the day length changes and the temperatures change, they're going to start moving again. And that's where we're going to see our fall nuisance aspect of these critters. Here's the problem. So one of the problems for homeowners, got this nice white house over here. You have a kudzu patch that's, if it's on, might not even be on your property. A lot of times it's not on your property, so you can't legally go do something about it. It's causes a real problem for pest control operators because they can't legally go over and treat kudzu that's off of somebody's property either. Homeowners are doing things like cutting the kudzu out. I mean, you've got this huge kudzu patch here, and you can imagine these poor folks over here have just been eaten up with the number of kudzu bugs that come out of this kudzu patch. So they actually went in, and we kind of predicted this. They went in and started bush hogging this stuff and spraying it with Roundup, and just trying to gain some relief from these critters. They're really not an attractive bug. They're the first instars here kind of look like something called a carpet beetle. These are the first instars. These are their eggs that they hatch from. And then you've got a third instar, fourth instar, and fifth instar over here, and then they turn into an adult. You know what the adult looks like. So in that springtime nuisance, you'll see huge populations of them. They'll just, it'll be a warm day, we'll get a warm snap, and you'll get big populations of them popping up and aggregating like this. This was picture was taken back in February of 2012. And then they'll get in a little crack, so you see some of the bugs right there, and then you get a nice close-up picture, and they're just packed in there. And there'll be a nuisance at that time. It warms up in the afternoon, and they will start flying around and being a nuisance at that time. That's that springtime nuisance. So on the bright side of things, we have for the first several years, we really couldn't find any natural enemies of this critter. And this is it was a classic case of an invasive species coming in, leaving its parasites, predators, and pathogens in its native range. And that was the case with kudzu bugs. When we had some biological control people here at UGA and throughout the Southeast who were looking for anything that would eat a kudzu bug, and nothing would eat kudzu bugs. We had people that were sampling hundreds and hundreds of egg cases. And finally this year, a parasite of eggs, this Paratellinomus saccharalis, it's an egg parasitoid. This is a thing that's probably a 32nd or a 64th of an inch long. It's a small little wasp that parasitizes the eggs of the kudzu bug. Has shown up in tremendous numbers throughout Georgia and parts of Alabama, and so it has shown up. It probably is going to have a pretty good impact on kudzu bug. We probably won't see a total disappearance of kudzu bugs, but it's going to help. So between the fact that we have this new parasitoid that will be spreading and following the kudzu bug, and the fact that it's probably self-regulating by impacting kudzu so much, as is typical of when an invasive species comes in, that first 3 to 5 years, the numbers are at their peak, and then at some point, we will reach some type of equilibrium. And I think that's probably where we're going to be here in Georgia. If you're listening several states away, it may not be the case because you may only be in your maybe first or second or third year. So if you're near kudzu and soybean, you're probably in for another couple years of high numbers. Okay, just in the couple minutes I got left here, wanted to, so if you got any questions there about just put it over in the chat box. I'll try to leave a couple minutes for the at the end for questions. But I will also I'm going to try to put this. I'll give this PowerPoint presentation to Kathy, and she's going to put it up, and you guys can download it if you want to. So a couple of the other fall critters. Certainly, multicolored Asian lady beetle is a standard. You can we've had problems with this thing for years. Kind of the same thing. When it's out in the garden and it's doing its thing and eating aphids, it's a great biological control. Both the immature stage and the adult stage is a tremendous natural enemy of aphids. But certain times of the year, i.e. the fall, they start coming indoors. Ohio State has the best website on this critter and things that you can do for this critter. And I think I referenced that website. I think Kathy was going to put up we came out earlier this year with a publication on management of pests in and around the home, and we talk a little bit about this critter and give the website for the Ohio State webpage. But it's by far got some of the best information on management of ladybugs. So brown marmorated stink bug is another one. I see John L. has a question here. So the Paratellinomus, the thing about this parasitoid, John, is that it only attacks several species in this family, Plataspidae. And the only member of the Plataspidae that is in this hemisphere is the kudzu bug. So really good parasitoids are what we call host-specific. And so we know through some work that was done on this critter in Mississippi that it does not move over onto native hemipterans. So it attacks, I think, just 2 or 3 species in that family, and the kudzu bug is one. It's from Japan. This parasitoid is actually from Japan. So the likelihood it's going to move over on anything is not very good. So the brown marmorated stink bug is, I think you've probably heard of this. We have seen it in Georgia, but it's not like pest control operator friends in the Northeast who, they've sent me pictures where this thing, it looks like scales on a fish on the side of a wall. There's so many of them on the side of a building, and this thing is 5 times bigger than a kudzu bug. It stinks, has a very wide host range from Asia, of course, and it's a tremendous agricultural pest and a major nuisance pest. So if you live in the Southeast, it's headed your way from the north, and the kudzu bug is headed north from the Southeast. So somewhere in between, these two are going to meet. But here in Georgia, we see them. I think we found our first one in 2010, and just haven't seen the numbers that they've seen up in the Northeast for some reason. Yellow jackets, of course, right now are starting to peak in their population. So, we're getting calls on yellow jackets. We're seeing yellow jackets. I'm paying attention outside, and you can see yellow jackets zipping in and out of their underground nest sites. So what happens with yellow jackets is, and the reason why you see them more commonly in the fall, is that the queens actually overwinter. The colony will die out. They'll remain active into, say, November or even early December if you live in a warm part of the Southeast. But typically what happens is those yellow jackets, the queen is going to overwinter. She's going to literally, she'll be a mated queen this winter. She'll go crawl up underneath a rock somewhere. She will survive the winter. She'll come out, and you will see a big, it almost looks like a hornet in the springtime. I get them in if you have a door that doesn't have a door sweep on it, they'll crawl up underneath the door, and I get them in my office in the springtime. I'll get 3 or 4, in a 1-month period. I'll get them flying. They'll come in, they'll get stuck in the windows. They're looking, those are queens, overwintered queens that are looking for a place to make a nest. They will start a nest. It's about as big as the palm of your hand, maybe a golf ball. And then throughout the year, those colonies all grow. So if all those colonies were founded at the same time by queens, and they all mature at the same time. So we do start seeing more yellow jackets in this fall, only because all the populations in an area are peaking at the same time in size. In other words, the number of wasps in a colony. So that's when we really start encountering them. So when you go to a fall outdoor festival or fair or something like that, that's when you start running into problems with yellow jackets drinking from your Coke or whatever. So got to be careful at this time of year with yellow jackets popping up. I put this in there for some of you who live in the Southeast. We get this thing commonly submitted to us by pest control operators and homeowners. It is a smoky brown cockroach. This is a first instar smoky brown cockroach. So it's actually the first instar of this ugly critter right here. So this is a smoky brown cockroach. That's the egg case. That's an egg capsule right there. Holds about, this female will produce this egg capsule. She will lay it about 1 per week during her 6 to 10 month life as an adult. And about 15 to 18 little baby cockroaches in that last picture are born from that egg case. And the reason I put this in here as a fall critter is because we start seeing peak populations about this time of year. So more adults, larger nymphal populations. The bigger roaches are more mobile. The one thing about this thing, this cockroach is from Japan. This is also an invasive species. It's been here a long time, but it's very desiccation susceptible. There's some really good work done. I think even there at Auburn, Kathy, by Art, who showed this thing really, Art Appel, who showed this thing is really desiccation susceptible, and so it harbors or is found in areas where relative humidity is really, really high. So if you have a leaky attic or you have moisture in your walls, many of the urban pests that we deal with are what I refer to as indicator species. So it will be, if the presence of the critter is there and it's a recurring presence, a lot of times it's indicative of a more severe problem, and a lot of times it's a moisture issue. And that would be you have a lot of smoky brown roaches in an attic, pretty good indication you might have a leaky attic. And then, of course, box elder bugs. Can't leave box elder bugs out of the fall invaders. You know, we see them on not so much box elder, but maple trees. And with some of these critters, if you kill these critters inside, you can wind up with something called carpet beetle. So carpet beetle it's a domestic beetle that will feed on the cadavers of these things. So with ladybugs, brown marmorated stink bugs, box elder bugs, we want to try to avoid their entry in the first place through either spot applications or exclusion. Because if they do get inside, you kill them inside, and you get huge, some of the populations of these insects can be enormous. And if you wind up with large populations of these things, a lot of times you'll wind up with a secondary pest problem, which would be a carpet beetle. It's a beetle that eats dead insects, and you can wind up with carpet beetle problems after this. And then something we've seen here, this is not your classic chinch bug. This thing's about 1/2 inch long. If you look over here, this photo here, this thing has started, this critter has shown up a number of times here in Georgia. When it shows up by the thousands on the side of buildings. It's a fall invader. It feeds on grasses. And we don't know what's going on here, but feeds on grasses, gets up underneath siding, gets all over the side of buildings. It is taxonomically, it is a chinch bug, but it's not your classic chinch bug that you find, the smaller type chinch bug that you find eating your grass. But we don't know a lot about this critter. We know that it feeds on grasses. At certain times of year, you'll have a very punctuated emergence of these things, and then the problem kind of goes away. And then I don't know if you could say this is really a fall invader as much as it is kind of a late summer invader. We've seen the past couple years enormous populations of this beetle called the sugarcane beetle. The thing about this, it feeds on grasses. When the beetles emerge, they're attracted to lights. It's a scarab beetle. That's the family, Scarabiidae. When it emerges, what it will do, it's attracted to lights on the side of a building, and then when the sun comes up the next morning, it has a very strong aversion to light. And so wherever it is, if it's along, say, an expansion joint over here, maybe a rubber caulking, or even a roof, asphalt roofing, it will chew through and damage the roof. It has really strong forelegs, and so wherever it is, it will dig holes in the roof and can cause tremendous damage. I've talked to pest control operators who have swept up 5-gallon buckets of these things around the outside of buildings on certain nights in, say, July and August. So you've got a pile of them right here, but there's nothing attracting them here. This is just a corner. They happen to be moving along this thing and kind of piling up in a corner over here. So we try to get pest control operators to just treat corners and along edges right here, and that will do well in killing the sugarcane beetle. And I'm going to end here on velvet ants and cow killers. Again, it's more of a late summer problem. These two critters go hand in hand, and mostly people are afraid of this one. Okay, so this is a cicada killer. It's a solitary wasp that attacks cicadas. So in the late summer, when cicadas are singing up in the trees, this critter, this usually happens here in Georgia, happens in July and August. It will go dig these burrows. Can you see these things right here? These burrows right here. So it's digging these burrows about 3/4 of an inch long. It stings the cicada. This is nature in action, I guess. So it flies up, grabs the cicada, digs a hole, goes up, finds the cicada, stings it, paralyzes it, drags it back down into this hole where it lays an egg on the cicada. The cicada is not dead, it's just paralyzed. The wasp larva hatches from the egg, begins to eat the cicada. So as the wasp larva is developing, along comes this critter. Along comes the cow killer, the velvet ant. It's actually not an ant, right? It goes down. It's actually a parasitic wasp. It's a wingless, solitary parasitic wasp of the larvae of the cicada killer. So you have a poor cicada that starts the whole thing. The cicada killer lays an egg on the cicada, and then along comes a cicada killer that parasitizes the cicada killer larvae. Wasps, I think, I've never been stung by wasps. I've been amongst hundreds of them at one time. The thing that would be most dangerous would be this thing. Do not ever let a child, these things are very attractive, they're pretty. Don't ever let a 2-year-old reach down and pick one of these things up because they have a stinger that's about almost a half an inch long, and they have a tremendous sting. And they will sting. And it's a wasp, it's not an ant. The males look just like this and they're winged, but this is a female and she will sting you. So I think that may be about all I had. I went a little bit over time. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to Ellen. And Ellen, if you and Kathy want to field some questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions. But I do appreciate everybody's attention. And if you got any questions, I'm here.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Suter. Does anybody have a question that they would like to type into the chat box? If you do, go ahead and do that. And for the rest of you, there are the poll questions coming up on the screen. If you will answer those quickly for us. And thank you, Kathy, for typing in that SurveyMonkey link. If you would all take a few minutes after the webinar today and go to the SurveyMonkey link that Kathy has typed in the chat box, it'll also be back up on the screen in just a moment. It's a very short, less than 10 question survey on today's presentation. And again, we thank you for attending. And if there are no more questions, then I think we're done.
Be sure to, I'll have that, I'll be sure to work with Kathy and you, Ellen, to put this thing, if people want this presentation, it'll be up for people to use. And I'd be happy to chat with anybody. I can give you my phone number at 770-233-6114. I'd be happy to chat with anybody about any of this if the need should arise.
All right.
What was that again? 61 what?
770-233-6114, and my email is dsuiter, that's DSUITER, at UGA.edu.
And Dr. Suter, we do have one question. Where are the best spots to treat in the home?
So what you want to do mainly is prevent these fall critters from actually coming in. They're coming from outside. They get in really small cracks. So, yeah, you know, I kind of look at this as more of throughout, rather than a one-time event in trying to seal things. It's almost a change in mindset. So you want to, throughout the year, be cognizant of small gaps and things of that sort. So looking at my own house, I have a fascia board. We didn't talk about rodents, but rodents can get through a roof rat can get through something the size of a quarter. So I'm getting a new roof put on my house right now, and I'm seeing areas where I know the rats were getting in. So you just want to be cognizant of small little gaps. You know, no matter what you do, it's hard to get all of them out, but sealing, caulking, plugging with, some of that steel wool, getting in areas where the bugs actually can't get in, and making sure that your vents around the outside, if you're on a crawl space, make sure your vents are really well sealed.
Here's another question for you, Dan. If insects end up getting inside or something and we decide to vacuum them up, or can we just carry those things outside and take them some distance away from the house, or do we really have to make sure that we just destroy those things by freezing them or something like that?
It's up to you. I think the vacuum, the vacuuming, the action of vacuuming is probably going to kill most of them anyway. You know, if it's something like fleas, you'd probably want to, if you're going to vacuum fleas, you'd probably want to take that vacuum bag, put it in a freezer for 3 or 4 days, make sure the fleas are dead. But, you know, ladybugs, things like that, take the vacuum bag out, you could probably shake that back in the woods somewhere and you'd be okay. And most of them are going to be killed, I think, by the action.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Thanks again, everybody. And be sure to join us on November 1st for the next Don't Bug Me webinar on ants, I believe. Is that right, Dr. Flanders?
That is correct. It's called Keep Ants Off Your Thanksgiving Table. And we just want to talk about all of these different ways to prevent the different kinds of ants from getting into your house.
All right.